Hi everybody, this is Mr. Steger. Just a little update. Did a computer update and somehow all my little videos of myself talking in the corner, the web camera's got me flipped upside down. So it's going to be a narrated version of our presentation today. So we're looking at variables in this quiver, changes that matter. Variables, there are three of them in science that we look at. They're the independent, dependent, and fixed variable. That fixed variable sometimes has other names that it's called by, but we're going to try to keep it fixed. The data we're going to be just reviewing real quickly will be the quantitative, the numbers, and the qualitative data that's described by words. So both math and science have variables, and in its most basic essence, variables are really simply values that can change. In our math example that I've got here, I've got the equation 3 plus x equals y. X and y are both variables, and the term variable makes sense when you realize that as x changes, y changes. So when x varies, y varies. And you can see what those inputs could look like with that x and y table right here towards the center of the slide. A science example of variable would be something like fertilizer helps plants grow. As fertilizer is used, plant growth changes. So x, y, fertilizer, and plant growth are all variables. One causes or could cause a change in the other. So in math, a variable is an unknown. So what does it look like? Well, in that first simple equation that we've got right here near the top of the slide, I've got 2 plus something equals something. Well, that varies. It depends. We could plug in the value 2. We get the value 4 as a result. 50 and 52. 2 plus 8 is 10. 2 plus 1/2 is 2 1/2. So in each example, we changed or varied one number and it affected the result. The result depended on the number we changed. Keep that in mind. The result depended on the number we changed. Now, science variables are like math variables, but we usually don't limit them to just numbers. They're things that we change. So the math variable is simple. The science variables can get somewhat complex. We're going to keep them simple for our little experience here. Variables are things that can be changed in math or science. They're independent and dependent. In our math problem example, the number we decided not to change right here, this first one, that's a constant. And in science, it's called a fixed, control, or constant variable. The variables that we changed, that we control, that's the independent variable. And the dependent variable relies on the change in the independent variable. So, a review and maybe a little bit more in depth. We've got three types of variables. Independent variable, which are often identified by the abbreviation IV. The independent variable you control or manipulate. The dependent variable is what is observed or measured by changing the independent variable. It's the data that results from it. Fixed or constant variables, these could change, but aren't. We don't want to mess around with too much stuff or we aren't going to know what causes the result in science. Now, what do they look like in science? I've got a real simple investigation or a problem that you might ask. Which paper towel holds the most water? Well, we're managing the type of paper towel we test, and the result depends on what we manage. So the independent variable here, what we manage, is which paper towel we're testing. We're comparing the paper towels to each other. The dependent variable is how much each of these paper towels holds. So the result depends on the type of paper towel we use. The fixed variable would be the size of the paper towel or the liquid used. If we have a larger piece of paper towel, it's going to hold more liquid. So we don't want that messing up our experiment. We keep all the sizes the same. The liquid used. Liquids have different densities. Some liquid might be more dense, have more mass than others. That would also mess up our investigation. So I'm going to let you take a try at this. I've got an investigation. How does fertilizer affect plant growth? And I'd like you to try identifying the independent variable in this. Now, the one thing I want you to notice, I'm going to walk through this real quick. The containers are all the same. The plant themselves are all the same. The amount of water is all the same. The light each plant receives is the same. The fertilizer changes. Okay, so the independent variable is, remember that's what we manage. Take a sec. What do you think the independent variable is? Okay, now the dependent variable. Remember that's the result of changing the independent variable. So this information relies on what we changed here. What do you think the dependent variable is? Okay, now lastly, the fixed or constant variables. They are the things that don't change. So take your try at that. Okay, here's what we've got. The independent variable is the amount of fertilizer. That's the only thing that changed in each of these 4 trials. The dependent variable would be the plant growth, so how much the plant changes was a result of the change in fertilizer. The fixed or constant variables are the amount of water, the soil, the light, the type of container, and the type of plant. Now, just a quick review. Qualitative data is words. It's hard to measure words. It's more of a descriptive thing. Information about qualities that can't actually be measured with numbers. Quantitative data, numbers, are things that can be measured more easily and shown in graphs. Okay, now when we graph our data, we need to include our independent and dependent variables. So which axis do those go on? Well, I've got a quick little memory trick here. If you remember the term dry mix, you'll never forget it. Always remember that the y-axis is the up and down axis. I always remember that by when I nod my head, yes, it goes up and down. And the x-axis, imagine your arms in front of you in the shape of an X. When they fall down, they're horizontal. That's the x-axis. So dry mix, you'll never forget. Now, this leads me into our investigation. I've got a couple links that you'll be able to access from the actual presentation in the Quiver, but we're going to measure the variables in paper airplane flight. We're going to be looking for the independent, dependent, and fixed variables. I've got this document available to you in the Quiver. Essentially what you'll be doing is trying 3 different weights of paper, very, very thin copy paper and some heavier stock. You'll be following the procedure that you'll see in the investigation or the inquiry sheet, completing it and turning it in on Google Classroom. Please follow the directions carefully. If you're not a real good paper airplane folder, I do have a video that you can watch both here and on the Quiver, and it's a pretty simple process to make a decent paper airplane. So, hope you enjoy the experience. If you have any trouble with variables, feel free to look this over, and there's plenty of online resources available to you too.